This week on Irish Bandit Revolution, we boldly go forward to the 24th century as we look at my 5 all-time favorite episodes of Star Trek, the original series. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right down to it. Irish Bandit Revolution begins now. Welcome back to another edition of Irish Bandit Revolution. I hope everyone is having a great week. I, as always, am your host, the one, the only, the second Irish Bandit. This week on Irish Bandit Revolution, my 5 returns, as we'll be looking at my 5 all-time favorite episodes of Star Trek, the original series. Now, I know Star Trek is probably not everyone's bag, and I get that, I understand that, and I respect that, but I absolutely love the Star Trek series. No, I'm not going to get my thoughts. We're going to stick to the television series, the original one. It ran for 3 seasons on NBC. It actually was, if I remember correctly, it was canceled after one of its seasons. I don't remember if it was season 1 or season 2, but a giant letter writing campaign was enacted, and it actually got Star Trek back on the air for another season. I think it was between seasons 2 and 3. I think. Don't quote me on that. If you know better, let me know in the comments section down below. But I want to say it was between seasons 2 and 3, and then 3 didn't perform as they wanted it to, which led to its ultimate cancellation. But because of that, Star Trek lived on through syndication, and because of its popularity in syndication, we got the 6 Star Trek movies, starting with Star Trek The Motion Picture in 1979, and ending with Star Trek The Undiscovered Country. And in addition to that, from 1987 for 7 seasons, we got Star Trek The Next Generation. But we'll talk about that later on this season, because yes, there's going to be a My 5 about my 5 favorite Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. But we're going to stick to the original series, and we're going to talk about the 5 episodes of the original series that are my absolute favorite. Now, I grew up a Star Trek fan. It was because of my dad that I became a Star Trek fan, and I absolutely love Star Trek to this very day, which is why when I met William Shatner back in 2015, I got a little emotional talking to him about, spending time with my dad watching Star Trek, and it would be some of the greatest moments that we'd ever have, watching Star Trek, the series or the movies. It didn't matter which, just being there, spending time with Dad, talking about Star Trek was just one of my favorite memories. And so you can understand how meeting Captain freaking Kirk would get me a little worked up. So anyway, let's just get right down to it. These are my 5 all-time favorite episodes of the original series, kicking off with number 5. This one was a great episode that kind of it took the fish out of water concept and turn it on its head a little bit, because I never thought that I'd be seeing Kirk and Spock wearing zoot suits and talking in gangster speak in this episode. But that's what we got in my number 5 all-time favorite episode, called A Piece of the Action. So I'm not going to get into too big of a detail of the entire episode. I'll just give you some basic plot outlines. The USS Enterprise has been ordered to Sigma Lotia 2, okay, where the space vessel Horizon was reported missing 100 years earlier. The ship receives a message from Bella Oxmix, a Laotian, I think that's what that says, who promises information about the Horizon and invites the crew down to the planet. First Officer Spock notes that their interference in the planet's development could violate the Prime Directive. I could get on a whole topic about how often they violate the Prime Directive, but we won't. Captain Kirk points out that the Horizon's arrival a century ago would have already contaminated the culture. Kirk, Spock, and Chief Medical Officer Dr. McCoy transport to the planet. They find themselves in city fashion after an American city in the 1920s, and some of the residents appear to be gangsters carrying Tommy guns, which was pretty cool, honestly. Then you had that whole other episode where they were on a planet that was the equivalent of Nazi Germany. For William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, who were both Jewish, for them to put on Nazi regalia, holy crap! Like that's commitment to the craft right there. The landing party is escorted by Oxmix's men to his office, during which they observe a drive-by shooting that kills one of their escorts. But the other continues on as if nothing happens. They arrive at Oxmix's office, where he orders his men to make a retaliatory attack against the rival gang, led by Jojo Krakow. Spock discovers an Earth book, Chicago Mobs of the 20s, published in 1992. Yeah, this is a time when we all thought we'd be wearing jetpacks by like 1993 and all. Yeah, I'm still waiting for my hoverboard. Back to the Future. It was left by the crew of the Horizon. Oxmix explains they have modeled Lotan. There we go. I thought it was Laotian for some reason. Con Supernussophone. What? Anyway. Lotan Society by the book. Sounds like they're talking about the Bible. Which Kirk compares to the cargo cults of Earth's 20th century. Oxmix demands the Enterprise crew supply his gang with phasers. Ooh, we're getting into the big time there. And when Kirk refuses, threatens to kill them. The landing party is held while Oxmix uses a communicator to repeat the demand to Chief Engineer Scott. So that's all I'll talk about for the episode, but again, this is one of my favorite episodes because, you have Kirk speaking like a 1920s gangster. He has a little kid there with him. He goes, "All right, kid, a piece of the action." You can say what you want about William Shatner. Like, he overacts. Sure, he does. He talks like this. Like, every word is its own sentence. And sure, he does. But there is a great, fun, campy quality to everything that I absolutely love. And I think this just plays it up so well, and it's such a great, fun episode with that 1920s feel to it. I absolutely love it. This one I remember is one of the ones I remember most. It was one of my first real introductions to the Star Trek show, and it had that great creepy visual of that floating green head. What I'm talking about if you've seen Star Trek. And then you had like little freaking Clint Howard, creepy looking little kid. You know what episode I'm talking about. My fourth favorite episode of Star Trek, the original series, is the Corbomite Maneuver. The Corbomite Maneuver was the 10th episode of the first season of Star Trek. It was directed by Joseph Sargent. And again, I'm not going to go into full detail. The storyline describes how the USS Enterprise encounters a massive and powerful alien starship and its unusual pilot. That being, what was his name again? Belloc. When I hear Belloc, I can't help but think of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Belloc. Anyway, the episode features a young Clint Howard, brother of actor-turned-director Ron Howard, who plays the alien at the end, with an overdubbed ethereal voice provided by Walter Edmiston. This is the first regular episode This was the first regular episode produced after the... Oh, it was the first after the first pilot. Okay. In which DeForest Kelley played Dr. Leonard McCoy, Nichelle Nichols played Lieutenant Uhura, and Grace Lee Whitney played Yeoman Rand. Oh, Yeoman Rand. Although viewers saw them first time in The Man Trap. Quick summary of the plot. On Stardate 1512.2, the Federation starship USS Enterprise, commanded by James T. Kirk, I think we all know that, finishes a third day of star mapping when novice investigator Lieutenant David Bailey, played by Anthony Call, spots a large spinning multicolored cube floating in space. First Officer Spock orders Helmsman Sulu, "Oh my." I'm very proud of my George Takei impression. To sound it all alert. Chief Engineer Scott cannot explain how the cube works. Bailey advocates attacking it with phasers. Kirk instead orders the ship to back away from the object. Kirk doing a smart thing for once. The cube comes even closer, emitting harmful radiation, and Kirk reluctantly destroys it. As Kirk is having lunch in his quarters, Spock announces that a much larger object has been detected. A gigantic glowing sphere quickly approaches the Enterprise, filling the bridge view screen even at a low magnification. Words do not make sense. Commander Balok identifies his ship as the Physaris, the flagship of the First Federation, explaining that the destroyed cube was a border marker. Belloc ignores Kirk's greetings and announces that he will destroy the Enterprise for trespassing into the First Federation territory. Now, would they, if you got the First Federation, the United Federation of Planets, what would happen if they went to war? Destroying the marker buoy. He gives the crew only 10 minutes to pray to their deities. Spock obtains a visual of Balok, a grotesque blue-skinned humanoid with a frightening face. Bailey succumbs to hysteria and Kirk orders him off the bridge. And I'll leave that one there as well. So yeah, the thing I remember most is that at the end of every episode of Star Trek for the longest time, you had a picture of that bluish, greenish face. Like that, looking at you. I scared the crap out of me as a kid. And then when they finally get on the ship, they see that Belloc is like this little kid, played by Clint Howard, who is the creepiest looking MFer I've ever seen in my life. Taragna? Okay, yeah, why is this little kid drinking? Anyway, yeah, the Carbonite Maneuver is like one of the best episodes of Star Trek that there is. Like, if we're talking like all-time great episodes, yeah, this one would definitely rank up there, and this is why it's number 4 on my list of my 5 all-time favorite episodes. It is just a memorable one, and I think this is one that really set the path for Star Trek. Coming in at number 3 on my list, this one is just a fantastic episode, and I think maybe if you did a list of like the best episodes ever of Star Trek, this might rank number 1. It could go either way with a few episodes, but this one is really, really a memorable one, and I love it. If I didn't, it wouldn't be in my top 5. Such a great, great episode. Coming in at number 3, Mirror, Mirror. Mirror, Mirror was the 4th episode of Season 2 and was written by Jerome Bixby and directed by Mark Daniels. Quickly going over the plot. After failing to persuade the Halkin Council, sure, let's go with that, to allow the Federation to mine dilithium crystals on their planet, Captain James T. Kirk, along with McCoy, Scott, and Communications Officer Uhura, attempt to beam back to the Enterprise during an ion storm, and find themselves on an Enterprise that has drastically changed. First Officer Spock now has a mustache and a goatee. That's a big dead giveaway right there. Uniforms are more revealing. Sidearms are standard issue, as well as daggers for officers. And the Federation has become an empire. After inquiring about the status of the mission, Spock orders the bridge crew to prepare a phaser barrage on the Halkins for their refusal to cooperate. Then uses an agonizer to punish Transporter Chief Kyle for an error. Kirk orders the landing party to sickbay so that they can assess their predicament in private. He deduces that the ion storm must have opened up a barrier between parallel universes, causing the landing parties in each universe to switch places. They decide to impersonate their counterparts until they can find a way home. Uhura ascertains that Starfleet has ordered the Hyken's destruction unless the Empire's demands for the dilithium are met. Kirk orders a 12-hour delay, which Spock reports to Starfleet. Kirk heads for his quarters and is nearly murdered by Chekhov and his henchmen, one of whom betrays Chekhov and saves Kirk's life. So yeah, this was a really insane episode because you had like a switch between the characters. You had Spock, who was now evil. You could tell he was evil. He had a goatee. I always said for the longest time, because I didn't always have this stunning beard you see before you. I used to have like the Van Dyke goatee going for me for the longest time, and I would always say that, yeah, I'm going to go as the good version of myself for Halloween. I'm just going to shave off my goatee. Hey, that was that was Star Trek logic at the time. You're evil, you got a goatee. And then you see the evil Kirk on the Enterprise just running amok. And oh my god, it was fantastic. This is definitely one of the most classic episodes of Star Trek. You think of Star Trek and you think of, you think of Mirror Mirror, and you also think of the other two episodes that I've got left on this list. So this is a really interesting episode, and just I love it for that whole switch thing. You know, Kirk and the others have to try to throw the evil Spock off the scent, while evil Kirk, he just doesn't give a shit. I'll kill you all. Great episode. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. If somebody sits you down and says you need to watch at least one episode of Star Trek, watch that one. That one, it might not make you a fan, but you'll be entertained from it nonetheless. Coming in at number 2, this is a fantastic episode itself, and it started a legacy pretty much, because after this episode came out, you then had the plot of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I think I just gave it away. But coming in at number 2 is my number 2 all-time favorite episode of Star Trek, Space Seed. Space Seed is the 22nd episode of the first season. It was written by Gene L. Kuhn and Casey Wilbur, and directed by Mark Daniels, and was most notable for the guest starring appearance of Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonan Singh. In the episode, the Enterprise encounter a sleeper ship holding selectively bred super people from Earth's past. Their leader, Khan Noonan Singh, attempts to take control of the Enterprise. Space Seed has been named one of the best episodes of the series by Cinefantastique and IGN. The 1982 film Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan serves as a sequel to this episode. References to Space Seed appear in episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Enterprise, and the 2013 film Star Trek Into Darkness. I guess I don't really have to do much more explanation than that, other than the Enterprise finds the derelict SS Botany Bay adrift in space. A landing party comprising of Kirk, McCoy, Scott, and historian Lieutenant Marla McGivers beams onto the freighter. The landing party finds a cargo of 84 humans, 72 of whom are alive in suspended animation after nearly 200 years. McGivers identifies the group's leader, who begins to revive and is taken back to the Enterprise for medical examination. Kirk has the Botany Bay taken in tow by a tractor beam, and Enterprise sets course for Starbase 12. In sickbay, the group's leader awakens and attacks McCoy, but impressed by McCoy's bravery, releases the doctor and introduces himself as Khan. Lieutenant McGivers marvels over Khan, a living relic from the 20th century. Her field of interest. First Officer Spock discovers that their guest is Khan Noonan Singh, who along with his people are products of 20th century selective breeding designed to create perfect humans. The genetic superhumans instead become warlords and conquered more than a third of the planet during the eugenic wars. This is one of the best episodes. Like it just said there, you had Ricardo Montalban, Mr. Rourke from, I think that was his name, Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island, Look, boss, keep playing. No, that's a seagull. And who could ever forget? Fine, rich Corinthian leather. So he was just fantastic as Khan in this episode and in the 1982 movie The Wrath of Khan. He just brought so much of that role, and it's just something he just sunk his teeth into. And he had in the original series, he had the iconic long black hair swept up in a ponytail and poofed out a little bit. And then in the Wrath of Khan movie, he had the gray hair. It just looked all awesome on him. And yeah, Ricardo Montalban really made this episode. He was the lifeblood of it, and it's a shame that he's passed away. But the man was in his 80s, I believe, when he passed. So, but yeah, it was a fantastic episode, and again, season 1 episode. So it was really one of the ones that, put Star Trek out there. It's like, yeah, here's what we are. This is our mission statement, and I love Space Seed. It is a great episode. Like I said before, it wouldn't be on here if it wasn't a great episode and I didn't love it. So before we get to number 1, let's take a quick look at a couple honorable mentions. So here it is, my all-time favorite episode of Star Trek. Let's just get right down to it. Number 1, The Trouble with Tribbles. The Trouble with Tribbles is the 44th episode of Star Trek, and it was the 15th episode of the second season. It was the first professional work of writer David Gerrold, and was directed by Joseph Pevney, who is said to be one of the most prolific directors of the series. In the episode, the Starship Enterprise arrives at Deep Space Station K7 to guard a consignment of grain bound for Sherman's planet. On arrival, a trader named Cyrano Jones, played by Stanley Adams, gives Lieutenant O'Hara a tribble, a small, furry alien life form with dramatic consequences. Captain Kirk and the crew also have to deal with the arrival of Captain Koloth and his Klingon battlecruiser, but the tribbles unexpectedly reveal a plot to poison the grain. Yeah, about 500 tribbles were created for the episode, with special tribbles created for certain purposes with beanbags or surgical balloons inserted in them. I think I know why, because they had to move or they had to breathe or something like that. 3 additional sets were created for this episode, although there were problems with finding enough matching chairs for the trading post area. The chairs had to be pulled out of showrooms around Los Angeles County, and Pevney was warned to make sure that they were not damaged during the episode's brawl scene. William Campbell had previously appeared as Trelane in The Squire of Gothos, and was intended to be a recurring villain as Koloth. Because of his other work commitments, these plans were not followed up on until he returned as Koloth in Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Blood Oath in 1994. Wow, okay. So yeah, that was basically the plot of the episode. You know, you had the Klingons coming in who hated the Tribbles, and the Tribbles hated them too, because, you know, whatever, the Tribble got near. That was my Tribble impression. Not as good as my George Takei impression. Oh my. You know you love it. But this one is one that I remember most because I think this was like one of the first episodes of Star Trek that I watched. And I don't know, there was something comedic about the Tribbles, you know. Kirk sitting there in a giant pile of dead Tribbles looking at one like it's his hairpiece. And maybe it was a hairpiece. I was waiting for his hair to go and start scooting off his head. That would have been interesting to see. But yes, this is one of the first episodes that I remember watching of Star Trek and absolutely loving it. There's a big fight scene between the Federation and the Klingons that's just so wacky fun. And then you have Cyrano Jones within the whole realm of this, and it's just, And they would revisit the Tribbles like a few times. Like, not only that, but in the animated series of Star Trek, you had the Tribbles return, only this time they wouldn't multiply when they fed, they would get bigger as they fed. And then there was Trials and Tribulations, I think it was in Deep Space Nine as well. I think that was the name of it, but don't quote me on it. It sounds right, though. I never watched Deep Space Nine, but I only watched that episode because it had to do with the Trouble with Tribbles, like going back to that episode. And I thought that was really cool that they did that. So yes, Trouble with Tribbles is my all-time favorite episode of Star Trek: The Original Series. Well, that about wraps up for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to set your phasers to stun and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate that. Let me know in the comments section down below what your favorite episode of the original series of Star Trek was. Don't forget to share this video anywhere you can on all the normal social media suspects. Over my shoulder right here, you're going to see a link to last week's episode where I'm looking back at all of the Ghostbusters movies. Just to let you know, as of the filming of this episode, I have not yet watched the new Ghostbusters movie. Maybe I'll keep that as a running gag throughout the entire season. No, I haven't watched it yet. Anyway, click that link and you'll click that link and you will be taken to last week's episode. In the description down below, you're going to see a link to my Redbubble store where you can pick up all your Irish Bandit merchandise. We have Irish Bandit stickers, t-shirts, tank tops, leggings. We have cases for iPhone and Samsung and iPad. I was talking about an iPod earlier with a friend of mine, so that's why I got an iPod on the Marine, even though I don't think they make them anymore. And we also have coffee mugs, travel mugs, all your beverage drinking necessities. So click the link down below, get all your Irish Bandit merchandise. Just so you know, I do get a small cut of the profits, but all that will be going towards making this a bigger and better channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I'd really love that. And if you're already subscribed, tap that bell. You will be notified whenever I go live with a new video or whenever I go live, period. And make sure that that is set to all and not sporadically or whatever it is. Everyone I set with the bell, I set to all. So anyway, let's look forward to next week's episode where Rank It will be returning, where I will be ranking all 5 seasons of the great series Haven. Lots of great actors in that. Eric Belfer, who's just been around forever. I watched him in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was pretty good in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Lucas Bryan, who's Canadian, by the way. Emily Rose, who was a small bit player in the 2nd season of Jericho. Adam Copeland, who's currently on Vikings. Oh, you don't know who Adam Copeland is? But he's probably better known to the world of professional wrestling as Edge, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And it was a fantastic show, and I'll get all about that next week. So, until then, I hope you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you again for another episode of Irish Bandit Revolution. I'm the Bandit, and I'm out of here. Take care.